Hello and welcome to the Daily Bible Podcast. My name is William Hemsworth. As always, I am very honored that you are joining me in this journey through the New Testament. Today we're moving right along into chapter 2, and today we reach one of the most iconic images in the Christmas story. It's something we sing about every year. It's something that we see plays on every year. This is the verse where the wise men finally reach their destination and they bring gifts to baby Jesus and worship him. So this is Matthew chapter 2, verse 11. Matthew 2, verse 11, which says, "On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh." So at this point, Jesus is no longer in the stable. This visit came sometime after his birth. It could be as long as a year after his birth. So Jesus was most likely right around 1 year old at this point. Now, although the wise men are bringing gifts, they don't realize the symbolism that is inside the gifts that they're bringing. Now, like I've said before, Matthew was written to a Jewish audience, and Matthew does a lot of linking between the Old Testament prophecies and Jesus. And he does that to prove to the Jewish people that Jesus is the Messiah that they've been waiting for all this time. And so this verse is no exception to what Matthew's doing. Matthew records them to show the fulfillment of Old Testament passages where the Gentiles bring their wealth to Israel's king. And we see this in Psalm 72:10 and Isaiah chapter 60, verse 6. Now, as far as over time, a tradition has come in where there were 3 kings that went to give Jesus presents and worship him. And this tradition came about because there are 3 gifts. Now, we don't know if there were 3 wise men, if there were 3 kings. We don't know if there were 20 kings. We don't know if there were only 2. We don't know. The tradition of 3 came about because there were 3 gifts. So that's we still have that tradition today when we talk about, like, the Christmas carol, We 3 Kings. It's a good example of that. Now, these gifts have symbolism. Gold represents Christ's kingship, frankincense his divinity, and myrrh his humanity, especially at his death. Because in Jewish ritual, when someone dies, you anoint them in myrrh. And so that's kind of a connection between Jesus' birth and his passion later on, after he dies on the cross. So there's a little background on this iconic verse. I hope it's been helpful that there is a linkage. Also important to note that the first people, besides his mother Mary and Joseph, the first people to worship Jesus and to accept him were these Gentiles. These people not in the Jewish lineage. These astrologers from Persia, which is modern-day Iran, came to worship the baby Jesus. Unlike Herod, who said that he wanted to worship him, and it was all a ruse because of a political power, these wise men actually did worship him. And as we're going to see later on, this is the first step in them being very influential in this whole story in Jesus' childhood. Just another example of how Matthew tells us that Jesus is not just for the Israelites, but for all people. Well, guys, hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Daily Bible Podcast. Hope it brought a little bit of insight to this very, very iconic verse that we always hear about this time of year. God bless you guys. And tomorrow we'll delve into the escape into Egypt. We're moving right along. It's pretty exciting. God bless you guys. Have a fantastic day.